here we are again. It's you, it's me, it's my phone camera, and because we're all really bored, and because I love video games, I've decided to do an updated game room tour 2020. It's April 2020. Here we go. So, this is the PC station. Basically, there's nothing special about this other than the fact that I have some video game books here. Um, I have three Let's Find Pokemon books, which is cool, and also a Look and Find Sonic the Hedgehog. And I have both the Guide to the NES library and Guide to the Super Nintendo library. Forgive my melatonin gummies being in the way. Hyrule Historia and the Super Mario Brothers Encyclopedia, and also a walkthrough for Twilight Princess that I bought when I first owned the game in like 2006 or 7. Don't mind that blinking light, that's just my mouse because for whatever reason it likes to flash a lot. So over here, I have a box labeled third-party controllers. I'm sure you can guess what's in that box. And then here I have a box that does have a label on it, but you can't see it because there's a bunch of shit on top. But if I open that box, you see it's a bunch of accessories and peripherals for a bunch of different consoles and things of that nature. Sorry for the loud noise. This is the Tower of Controllers, atop which sits a Duck Hunt / NES Zapper lamp that my friend Andrew made me, and also my lucky collecting hat. So yeah, controllers for everything are basically in here. The only controller that I don't keep in here is the Atari 5200 controller, because that console has its own controller door on it. Everything else goes in here, all the way down. These two drawers right here are dedicated entirely to Nintendo 64 controllers because there are thousands, millions, billions of them. And then there's these last two drawers down here where I have some controllers that I barely use, which is why it's covered up by this box. And then some cases for consoles and also a couple plug-and-play games. But yeah. Moving over to the wall, right here above my bed, obviously I have plushies of different video game characters and things of that nature, and I have Pez dispensers of video game characters and things of that nature. But I also have some memorabilia and posters. So I attended the Nintendo World Championships 2017 with my friend Jeffrey, and I got to get a rally towel and a wristband and a lanyard for that event. And I decided to put them in a shadow box because I'm cool like that. I have traditional classic posters that came with games from back in the day that I've put on my wall. This one here, and also this Sega Genesis one. This came with, I think it came with Pokemon Sun and Moon, like the dual pack. I don't actually remember. Maybe it came with some Pokemon cards and I'm misremembering. This I got from Nintendo New York, and that I got from Club Nintendo, and this an ex of mine gave to me. But let's actually talk about the games. So here on this wall, I have a bunch of binders, which I'll come back to in a second, but let's talk about the obvious stuff. So this is a soft carrying case for the Nintendo Entertainment System, and also Super Pong by Atari from, I believe this is from 1975, the Atari 2600 Junior, and the Sears Video Arcade, which is a variant of the Atari 2600 that Atari manufactured just for Sears. An NES Game Genie, Super Nintendo Game Genie, and a Model 1 Sega Genesis with a power base converter on it. Here's an original PlayStation with a Pocket Station that's only from Japan, and the Sega Genesis Game Genie. And then all of these binders here are loose cartridges and manuals for a bunch of different games. But this is basically where I keep handheld stuff, if I could speak a little bit more frankly about what's really here. So everything in this binder is just original Game Boy, Color, Advance, Virtual Boy. I needed two binders for Game Gear because those cartridges are huge, so I separated them from A to M and N to Z. The Tiger Gamecom, and then this is manuals for any consoles, as long as those manuals are loose. If I have the box, the manual will go in that box, and we'll actually talk about boxes right now because I have a ton of them. So up here I have a bunch of soft carry cases for various consoles, and then the boxes for the Super Scope, the NES Action Set, Starlink Battle for Atlas, and spare Super Mario Brothers cereal, or actually I think it's just Super Mario cereal. But let's talk about the boxes. I have a bunch of console and game boxes. The game boxes are here and console boxes are up in the closet, and we'll talk about those in a bit. But I also have my Amiibo here, and then there's this, the expansion module number 1 for the ColecoVision, which allows you to play Atari 2600 games on it. But most of these are completely unprotected because I take very good care of everything, so I don't really feel the need to put them in box protectors. But a couple of them, when I bought them, came with box protectors, so I just left them in those. The only exception to that was my copy of Majora's Mask, which is my favorite game of all time. I put that in a box protector on purpose because it's my favorite game of all time. You might have seen this. This is the NES Retro Mini. It lets you play NES games on the go. It's not a real console per se. It was manufactured later to allow collectors to play their NES games on the go, and the same with the Superboy. It's not an official release by any company. It's basically kind of like a toy slash video game machine at the same time. It's not a real console, technically. And then, hey, look, it's Coleco Frogger, the tabletop arcade. Pretty rare. And then the extension unit for the bottom of the Sega CD Model 2 to allow you to play with a Sega Genesis Model 1, because I'm that cool. Let's go over to the closet. Alright, closet has a lot of stuff in it, but let's start down here. This is where most of my handheld consoles are, and some other things. So obviously, PSP 2000. Oh, actually, I believe this is a 3000, never mind. PlayStation Vita, Sega Game Gear, and the turntable for DJ Hero. This is just the box for my Switch Pro controller. The controller is actually over here, because I've been playing Animal Crossing. Complete in-box Dreamcast visual memory unit. Thank you, Tyler, for the box. Original Nintendo 3DS and new 3DS XL and a Nintendo 2DS. Here's the DSi, DS Lite, and original DS. Here's a PSP 1000. It doesn't work, but it doesn't matter because I have this one and it works. I keep my Switch Lite in this case, but I suppose I'll open it up just to show that it truly does exist. Hooray. And this is an Atari 1027 printer for the Atari 800 XL computer. This is a Tandy Coco, or a Tandy Micro Coco, which stands for Micro Color Computer. It's just a vintage computer. They are actually important to video game history, just in case you didn't know, because a ton of games came out for them, and some exclusives as well, so they are important. I'm not just a console gamer. And then up here, there's tons and tons of boxes of everything imaginable. So let's start down here. Okay. Here's an Xbox 360 Pro box. There is a console in there. Some of these boxes are empty. Some of them have manuals in them, and some of them have everything in them. XYZ. So here we go. This is an Xbox 360 Pro. It is in that box. Here's a PlayStation 2 Fat, black. It is in that box. Intellivision Model 2 is in there. Magnavox Odyssey 2, it's in there. Microvision, that's in there too. The Switch Lite, well, you just saw it's down here, but I keep the boxes for everything. Let's go down. Atari Video Computer System, this is specifically the 4-switch model, and it is in there. Here's a box for the original Wii, and that is in there. The ColecoVision Roller Controller, that's in there too. Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix. The action pad is in there, but the game is on my shelf. The Atari 5200 trackball controller, that's in there. The Commodore 128 computer, that's in there. And the Commodore 64 is in there, as well as the new Nintendo 3DS XL box. That's actually down here, the console. You saw it before. And this is the box for the Nintendo DSi. But this is actually the box for the black Nintendo DSi. I have a blue one, so when I get a black one, it'll go in that box. Here's a box for the Super Nintendo, and mine is in there. I have another one set up. There's 2 models of it. Model 2 is on my shelf. This is the box for the Kinect. I wish you could see, but they decided not to label the side, and I want to save space, so I'm not displaying it long ways, but the Kinect is in there. Here's the UDraw game tablet for Xbox 360, which is in there. The IntelliVoice voice synthesis module for Intellivision, and that's in there. Here's the box for the original Nintendo Switch, which is on the shelf. Tiger Gamecom, which is in there. Here's the box for the original Nintendo 3DS, which, as you saw, is on the dresser down here. Okay, so the games for both Wii Fit and Wii Fit Plus are on the shelf, but the balance boards are both in there. And yes, I do own multiple balance boards. There's one in here, and there's one in here. And just so I don't have to take one out every single time I want to play Wii Fit, there's also one under the couch. So I have three. Here's a Sega Pico box, which is in there. Sega Genesis Model 2 box. The Genesis Model 2 is on my shelf. The TRS-80 color computer box. Now this one's the micro color computer. This is the full-size color computer, and this is actually the Model 2, and it is in there. And then the Commodore 1571 disk drive for the 128 computer, which is also in there. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in this closet, and I'm always getting more. So let's continue over to the consoles. More consoles. Firstly, we have, we'll talk about this in a second, but firstly we have up here more posters. I won't bother explaining them, but yeah, check it out. More posters. Original gray Game Boy and Play It Yellow Game Boy. These are Game Boy Pockets, blue, red, and yellow. And then Game Boy Color. I have 4 colors. The Kiwi, which is this one. They have great names, don't you think? Kiwi, Berry, Atomic Purple, and Grape, which is the purple one. I have 2 Game Boy cameras. They're just called red and yellow. I have a Game Boy Micro, just the black variant with a fire faceplate. Here's my e-reader, and I have some Tiger handheld games. I have Full House, which is incredibly rare. You'd be surprised how difficult it was to find this one. And Paperboy, which is not rare, and I found it at a yard sale. Bomb Sweeper, which is a Game & Watch, and is the only Game & Watch I own. Here is a Game Boy Color Game Shark. Game Boy Printer, some Pokewalkers from Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and some worm lights for the original Game Boy. And here is a speaker setup for the Game Boy Advance SP, along with the link cable for the original Game Boy, and a third-party link cable for Game Boy Advance, and also the wireless adapter for Game Boy Advance SP, and that's actually an official piece of first-party hardware. Then, of course, I skipped over the Platinum Game Boy Advance, Indigo Game Boy Advance, Glacier, I believe this one is called, or maybe it's Arctic White, something like that, and Fuchsia. And then Game Boy Advance SP, I have Onyx Black, Cobalt Blue, and Platinum. And then down here, I have Rob the Robot, and a couple of other things. Here's the Reality Quest The Glove, is what it's really called, although people call it a bunch of different things like the Gauntlet or the N64 Power Glove. The Super Game Boy, which allows you to play Game Boy games, only original Game Boy games, and some Game Boy Color games on your Super Nintendo. And yeah, Rob the Robot, he's cool, he's here. But this is usually where I just keep toys. So I have a bunch of toys here. I'm sure if you've seen my other tour videos, you've seen this shelf quite a bit. It's quite an eye catcher. People talk about it a lot when they come to visit me for the first time. All right. And then last 2 things, I guess, are the gaming center and then the wall full of console games. So here we go. Right here, this might be the biggest eye catcher in the room, is of course this giant setup. So here's my couch. It's just a futon, and don't mind that stain. That's from an ex-girlfriend who, against my wishes, put a greasy bag from a fast food restaurant on my couch, and now that stain will never come out. That's not why she's my ex-girlfriend, but I like to pretend that's why. Okay, so I have 2 televisions. Matt, why do you have 2 televisions? Well, simple. I'm a purist. I refuse to play games designed for tube televisions on a brand new TV, and vice versa. So, I have HD consoles hooked up to this bad boy, and I have SD consoles, standard definition consoles, hooked up to this bad boy. And I get a lot of people asking me, not about this TV, these are like a dime a dozen, but about this TV. So let's talk a little bit about it. This TV is a Sony Wega Trinitron, and it's a flat screen, but it is still a tube television. It's probably the best TV for retro gaming, at least in my opinion. And you can see me hanging out with you guys while I talk about this. Super fun. But let's actually talk about the consoles. First things first, how do I have all of these set up on these televisions? Well, three ways. So way number one is coaxial stuff. That all goes right here with a coaxial splitter. You might notice it has a red light on it, and that's because this is a powered coaxial splitter. If you use a non-powered coaxial splitter, that's fine, but the more you plug into it, the more your image will degrade on the television and the more snowy the picture will be. Using a powered splitter lets me have a perfectly crisp image no matter how many consoles I hook up to this thing. And I have so many consoles that use RF only that these 5 inputs plus the power, which is the top right one, is the power. These 5 inputs aren't enough. I have ones daisy chained together using pass-throughs, which still works because of the power. So, yeah, get a powered splitter if you're going to do this sort of thing. Otherwise, it'll look like crap. Way number 2 for RCA, which is the red, white, and yellow jack, which is right here. So, I have these switch boxes here. And each of these switch boxes serves a specific function. So these two on the left correspond to video 1 on the CRT. And these two switch boxes here correspond to video 2 on the CRT. The reason why I need 2 switch boxes on each is because I have more than 8 consoles hooked up to each video input. So if I need to use something on, let's say, this switch box, like the GameCube or the original Xbox, I come over here where it says 1-2. If I hit this button, now this switch box is active. If any other button on this is pressed, this switch box will be active. So to play GameCube games, I'll just show you, I suppose. Turn on my GameCube. If I want to play it on this television, let's say I have the 3DO pressed. Let's just say. And I turn on the GameCube. Nothing is happening. It's also because I'm not on video 1. But okay, I'm on video 1 and still nothing is happening. So I come over here, GameCube is pressed, but it's on switch 2. So let's go to switch 2. There you go. Here's the GameCube. And that's how that works. Pretty simple. Pretty easy. And very efficient, actually. These are not powered splitters, but that's because RCA suffers from very little image degradation without a powered input. So I don't worry about it. But yeah, now let's talk about some consoles. This is a Philips CDI, which I don't have a controller for, so I can't play it. But I do have a game, just one. I'll get more eventually. And of course, here's a PlayStation 4. Oh crap! I forgot about the third way that I hook up consoles. So there are a couple HDMI inputs on the back of this television, so I just have all of the wires that come from my consoles roped together so that they form one big bulky wire with all of the ends of them poking off. I wonder if I can show that. Yeah, here's that wire. It's just a bunch of wires lumped together, and then they come into the back of the TV, and if I need to switch one, I do, but it doesn't happen very often because there are enough inputs on the back of that TV. But anyway, yeah, PlayStation 4. Cool. And these are Commodore 64 and Atari 8-bit computer games. I keep them here, not for any specific reason, just because that's, where they ended up after some moving, and I never moved them back. They look pretty good there. All right, let's start on the right side. I never seem to do that. So firstly, here's the NES Miracle Piano. That's an accessory for the original NES, and it also works with the Super Nintendo and Amiga computers if you have the correct inputs for them. But okay, here's the Atari 5200 and the Microsoft Xbox 360 Slim, Sega Master System, PlayStation 1 Model 2, or just called PSONE, PS1, Nintendo Super Famicom, which is the Japanese equivalent to the Super Nintendo, and this thing that I always have to talk about because it was not made by Nintendo, but it is official Nintendo hardware because it was officially licensed by Nintendo. This came out only in Japan. It's called the Sharp Twin Famicom. It combines the Japanese Nintendo Entertainment System with one of its accessories or add-ons, the Famicom Disk System. And this lets you play every single Japanese NES game on one unit instead of having to own two, the Famicom and the Disk System. And this is an official piece of hardware. It came in a bunch of different colors. It was manufactured by Sharp, the company that makes televisions. but Nintendo let them do it, so it's an official piece of Nintendo hardware. Here's a Sega Saturn with a memory card stuck into the cartridge slot. A Sega Dreamcast, very yellow, I'll have to fix that eventually. An Atari Jaguar, because I hate myself. And the silver PlayStation 2 Slim. We'll talk about color variants, I'm sure, a lot in the future with each other, because I love to collect color variants. And here's a Mega Man X figurine. Here's the Darth Vader Atari 2600. And a Virtual Boy, because again, I hate myself. And let's come over here. We'll start at the top and work our way down. Here's my Wii U, the Deluxe Edition, also known as the black one, with the gamepad. Here's a ColecoVision, which I never really play that much, which is why it's all the way up here. My Nintendo Switch, Atari 7800. Here's a Nintendo 64 with a third-party expansion pack, because after all this time I still haven't gotten a first-party one because I suck. A TurboGrafx 16, which I just recently got. Here's the Model 2 Super Nintendo we talked about earlier, since my Model 1 is in that box. And a Model 2 NES, because my Model 1 is in that box. And here's that GameCube that I turned on earlier. It's the black one, but I do have more than that. And it's got the Wavebird controller receiver plugged in and a memory card. And here's that Genesis Model 2 I was talking about that isn't in the box. It's got a Sega 32X attached to it, as well as a Sega CD Model 2. Those are relatively new also. And here's a Wii Mini, something that most people don't know exists. So yeah, look that up. I won't bother explaining it. Here are my collection of 3DO games and one PlayStation game that I have that's a long box, as well as the boot disc for the Game Boy player, for the GameCube, because that's attached. And here's a Model 1 Intellivision, which I don't have a box for. And then here's a bunch of PC games. Now, I do have a lot of PC games that aren't on disc or floppy, and of course they're just installed digitally onto my computer, but these are the ones that I have that are physical, so they go here. And now we come to this monstrosity, the giant wall full of games. So let's see if I can do this justice. Here we go. Let's start at the top and work our way down. Okay. From here, all the way down, and then back, and then all the way down, and then back right to here, is Nintendo Entertainment System games. I have about 250 of them, and they're marvelous. It's one of my favorite consoles of all time, which is why I have so many. It's one of the easiest consoles to collect for, because a lot of games for it are actually very cheap. You'd be surprised. It has a ton of commons that are really cheap. Go out there and collect. But then I start Super Nintendo, which happens to be my favorite console of all time. And that starts here and goes all the way down, of course. And then comes down here and stops right there with Zoop. And then we start some Japanese games. These are Super Famicom games, the Japanese Super Nintendo. And they don't have end labels, so I gave them my own. And then we have North American Nintendo 64 games, which also don't have end labels, so I bought some professionally made ones on Etsy. Those go all the way down here. And then more Japanese games. These are Famicom games, these colored ones. And then these are the Famicom Disk System games I was talking about earlier. They're yellow floppy disks. I won't bother taking one out and showing it to you, but they're super cool. Look them up if you haven't ever heard of them before. All right, more Famicom games. And then we come here to what I like to call the Vintage Gaming Center, because it's in the center of these units. And they're all classic gaming. So we start here with Intellivision, and that comes all the way down here, where it stops right here with Zaxxon, and we start with Donkey Kong on ColecoVision. I've got only 3 ColecoVision games, because I'm bad. And then I have 4 Atari 7800 games. And then we start with Adventure on Atari 2600, which goes all the way down here. All the way down, literally to the end with Yours Revenge. And then we come down here, and here are some Magnavox Odyssey 2 games, which are unlabeled, and I'm keeping them unlabeled because they have these stupid handles on them that makes it hard to label them and read those labels when they're placed like this. But yeah, they're all unique, so I guess I don't mind. I really do mind, but I'm lying. Here's Atari 5200 games, which again don't have end labels, so Etsy to the rescue. Right next to Atari Jaguar games, same deal, no end labels, Etsy to the rescue. And now Sega Genesis, which goes all the way down, all the way, and then starts again here. And these are all alphabetized because I like order. And then Sega 32X games. And then my very scant collection of TurboGrafx 16 games, my one CDI game, and then these are all PlayStation 1 games all the way down to here, with the start of Choo Choo Rocket, because this is the Dreamcast collection. That's not Choo Choo Rocket. I can't look correctly in the camera, apparently. These are all Dreamcast games up until this one, Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation. That's a PlayStation Vita game, and my only PlayStation Vita game. These are original Nintendo DS games all the way up to here, where the spines become only white, and those are Nintendo 3DS games, which continue down here. And they stop, and there's this big empty hole here for more games eventually. But then we have some color variants and different consoles that aren't hooked up that are just on display. So here's two more GameCubes like I was talking about, Indigo and Platinum. And here's two Wii Family Editions. You can distinguish these from the regular Wii by the fact that they are supposed to be placed on their sides like this, because the word Wii reads correctly when it's horizontal. On a traditional Wii, the word will read correctly when it's stood upright. I have a white one and a black one. Here's a Sega Genesis Model 3 with an Ouya, look that thing up, and the black PlayStation 2 Slim. This is the 3DO. This is the Gold Star model. I believe it was the first model to come out, and it's the only one I have. And here's a PlayStation 3 Slim, and just a little plug-and-play Ms. Pac-Man machine, and an original Xbox. Also the only one I have. Then more games. Here's Sega Master System, PSP, Nintendo Switch, and GameCube starts here, which comes all the way down to here, where Wii begins. And Wii continues down here to Wii U. And then here's Sega CD, Sega Saturn, and then PlayStation 2, which goes all the way to the end. And down here. And then we actually start PlayStation 3 first, and then PlayStation 4, then original Xbox, Xbox 360, and that continues all the way down until right here, where I have Sega Pico games and a couple of demo discs and things of that nature. And then I have an Atari 400 home computer. It has a dust cover on it, that's why it looks like that. The Atari 800 home computer, the Atari 800 XL home computer, and the Atari Video Computer System, the original first model, the Heavy Sixer, which has a rounded bottom and 6 face switches. And yeah, aside from some other merchandise that I have hidden in drawers and things of that nature, that is basically my whole video game collection, all contained in one room. Again, like I said, with very few exceptions. Eventually I'll have more space and I'll be able to do a lot more with collecting games. But this is it for now. Thanks for sitting through this giant slog of a video just to cure my boredom, and hopefully yours too. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay playing games.